The manufacturing hall of Ander Vehicle Manufacturing, AVM, had the acoustics of a cathedral, but none of the reverence. The overhead fans hummed like tired preachers, filling the silence no one dared break. Dozens of engineers stood at attention, their eyes locked on Anderson Aero, billionaire founder of AVM, a man who had built his fortune on engines and sheer obstinacy. Anderson wore his signature white flowing agbada, a red cap perched on his head like punctuation. He looked less like a boss and more like a disappointed patriarch. His voice carried across the steel chamber with the weight of a verdict. "Gentlemen," he said, "we have built cars that won awards across Africa. We have delivered vehicles trusted by kings and presidents. But for 1 month, 1 whole month, we have failed to deliver the presidential car mandated to us." Heads dropped. Feet shuffled. No one dared answer. The specifications had been absurd from the start. A vehicle that could withstand bullets, explosives, and hostile terrain, yet glide with the elegance of a presidential convoy. Every prototype had failed spectacularly. Engines overheated, armor cracked, and wheels snapped under pressure. For a company built on miracles of machinery, this was humiliation in slow motion. Anderson's voice grew heavier. "If we fail here, AVM fails. Investors will scatter, competitors will laugh, newspapers will declare us finished. Imagine the headline: Vehicle giant can't deliver for the president." He let the silence hang, knowing it cut deeper than words. And then, from the back of the hall, a voice, hoarse, broken, yet defiant, cut through. "I can do it." The room froze. Engineers turned, faces incredulous. Anderson blinked once, then twice. Standing in the doorway was a man no one expected to see in such a place. His coat was black, but ripped, stained with Lagos mud. His hair hung wild, his beard untamed. He looked less like an engineer and more like a cautionary tale about poor decisions. But his eyes burned. The engineers burst out laughing. One of them, tall and arrogant, clapped mockingly. "Security, remove this man. We are discussing serious matters, not fairy tales from the street." But Anderson raised a hand. "Wait." The hall erupted in whispers. "Sir, you can't be serious." Someone protested. "He's not an engineer. He's a madman." Anderson ignored them. He had survived too long in business to dismiss instinct. Something in this stranger, this wreck of a man, looked sharper than the suits around him. "Come forward," Anderson commanded. The man hesitated. The stairs of the room pressed against him like a wall. But slowly, he stepped in, each pace uncertain but deliberate. When he reached the front, Anderson handed him a red marker. "Here," Anderson said, eyes piercing. "Show us." For a moment, the man just stared at the whiteboard, his hands trembling slightly. Then, something shifted in his face. His eyes hardened. He turned and began to draw. Lines flowed. Curves sharpened. The smirks around the room began to falter. In minutes, a rugged yet elegant SUV emerged. Reinforced body panels. Shock-absorbing wheels. Multi-layered armored glass. He moved down to the engine. Precise, detailed, almost surgical. "This," the stranger explained, voice steady now, "is how you keep durability without losing speed. Integrate a hybrid cooling system for the armor layers. Suspension like this can absorb explosive shocks without overturning." He stepped back. Silence swallowed the hall. Jacob Smith, the lead engineer who had mocked him earlier, whispered hoarsely, "How?" Anderson's face remained unreadable, but inside his chest his heart pounded. He knew what he was looking at. This was not chance. The man had just solved in 10 minutes what his celebrated engineers hadn't cracked in a month. Finally, Anderson asked, voice low but commanding, "Who are you?" The marker slipped from the stranger's hand. His shoulders sagged, releasing years of weight. "My name is Samani," he said. His voice broke. "And once, I was an engineer." The hall gasped. Engineers exchanged stunned glances. Samani sat heavily on a chair, his story spilling out in fragments. Once a lead automotive engineer in Port Harcourt, praised, awarded, envied. Until betrayal. Colleagues who plotted his downfall, faked his resignation, drained his accounts. His fiancée left him, branding him a failure. Parents gone, family gone, everything gone. The street had been his only refuge. Anderson stepped forward. He extended a hand. "Sam Namdi," he said, voice firm, "you have just saved this company. From this day, You are no longer a homeless man. You are one of us. Sam's eyes widened. Tears cut through dirt-stained cheeks. He reached forward with trembling hands, and the hall erupted in applause. Engineers who had mocked him minutes before now rushed forward, eager to shake his hand. Anderson turned to his assistant. Prepare his employment letter immediately. Sam couldn't hold it anymore. He buried his face in his hands and wept, the weeping of someone finally remembered by the world. But Anderson, even in the thunder of applause, narrowed his eyes. He had seen too much of life to believe in uncomplicated redemption. This man had a gift, but gifts attract enemies. The story of Sam Namdi had only just begun. The week after Sam Namdi's unlikely resurrection, Ander Vehicle Manufacturing looked less like a failing factory and more like a revival meeting. The air, once heavy with despair, now vibrated with energy. Engineers who had been dragging their feet days earlier now moved with new determination. Every conversation carried Sam's name. The homeless man turned engineer had become a symbol, proof that miracles could be drafted with nothing more than a red marker. Sam adapted quickly. His hair was trimmed now, his coat replaced with crisp shirts. But the fire in his eyes remained unchanged. At the design table, he was relentless. Sleeves rolled, brow furrowed. His sketches came alive not as idle drawings, but as fully formed solutions. Senior engineers, men who had once laughed at him, now sat around him like students. Anderson Aero himself often walked into the lab, leaning silently against a pillar, watching. For the first time in weeks, he could sleep at night. Investors who had been seconds from pulling out now spoke in hopeful whispers. The presidential car was back on track. But Sam carried scars the factory could not see. Late at night, when the drafting pencils were put away and the engineers went home, he sat alone, staring at blueprints like they were battlefields. Memories of betrayal haunted him. Colleagues who ruined him, a fiancé who abandoned him. The world had taken everything once. Could it do so again? One evening, as the sun bled orange across the Lagos skyline, Sam walked out of the cafeteria with a steaming cup of coffee. At one of the tables sat Sandra Coyote, one of AVM's youngest engineers. She had been watching him for days, curiosity hidden behind quiet eyes. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, smiling. He hesitated, then nodded. Sandra was bright-eyed, gentle-voiced, and unlike many others, she had not mocked him when he first appeared. "You've shaken this place," she said softly. "Everyone's talking about you. Even Anderson seems lighter around you." Sam chuckled, shaking his head. "I'm just doing what I was born to do. But it still feels strange being here again." "Again?" she asked. He paused. His voice dropped. "I lost everything once. My fiancée, Rebecca. The night my career collapsed, she walked away. Called me a failure. That night was the night I stopped believing in love." Sandra's chest tightened at the words, but before she could reply, Anderson appeared. "Sam," he said warmly. "Tomorrow, the prototype faces its test. The president's people will be here. Be ready." Sam nodded, his heartbeat quickening. Tomorrow would decide if his second chance held. But as Anderson walked away and the engineers buzzed with excitement, another pair of eyes watched from outside the factory gates. Behind the tinted glass of a parked car, Rebecca sat. The woman he had once loved. The woman who left him for dead. Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "So, you think you can rise without me, Sam? You think you can find love again?" "No, not while I breathe." Beside her, two rough-looking men sat in silence, waiting for orders. The next morning, presidential security officials arrived at the testing field. Tall men in dark suits, their faces unreadable behind sunglasses. Anderson welcomed them personally. And there it was, a prototype, gleaming under the sun like a beast bred for war but dressed for a parade. Reinforced body panels, thick glass, an engine that looked both elegant and unbreakable. Sam stood silently at the side, his hands trembling. Anderson laid a firm hand on his shoulder. "Breathe, Sam. You've already won. Now let them see it." The test began. Bullets rattled against the SUV. The armored panels held without a dent. Explosives thundered nearby. The suspension absorbed the shock, tires gripping firmly. At top speed, the engine roared steady, unfaltering. When it ended, the officials exchanged a glance, then a nod. One of them spoke. "This car will serve the president well." Cheers erupted. Engineers hugged. Anderson's eyes glistened as he turned to Sam. You saved us. But in the middle of the celebration, Sam felt a chill. His instincts screamed. Across the distant fence, for just a second, he thought he saw a familiar face. Watching. Rebecca. That night, in the small apartment Anderson had arranged for him, Sam sat by the window, staring at the city lights. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Did you think I forgot you? Did you think you could just move on? Enjoy your victory, Sam. Soon, I'll take back what is mine. Sam's hands shook. He didn't need a signature. He knew that voice. Rebecca was back. And this time, she hadn't come to weep. She had come to burn. The morning headlines declared triumph. AVM unveils presidential car, a national victory. Photographs of Anderson shaking hands with stern-faced security officials filled the newspapers. Analysts called it a turning point for Nigerian engineering. But inside the factory, where champagne corks still lay forgotten in corners, one man sat restless. Sam should have been basking in the glow of achievement, yet the message on his phone from the night before echoed in his head like a curse. Soon, I'll take back what is mine. It was Rebecca. He knew her cruelty too well to mistake it. That Friday evening, Sandra invited Sam to a quiet dinner at a garden bar near the factory. Palm trees framed the place, strings of fairy lights swayed in the breeze, and the smell of roasted plantain drifted on the air. You've been distracted, she said, her voice low. You don't talk much these days. Sam forced a smile. Just thinking too much. About the project? He hesitated, then shook his head. No, about someone I thought was gone forever. Sandra reached across the table, touching his hand gently. Sam, you're not the man who lost everything anymore. You're the man who saved us all. Don't let ghosts steal that from you. For the first time in years, he felt warmth spread in his chest. He squeezed her hand. Thank you, Sandra. But across the street, a camera clicked. Rebecca lowered her phone, her eyes burning. Watching them laugh and share food was like acid poured into an open wound. Her whisper was venom. You think she can replace me? Never. The following weeks only deepened the bond between Sam and Sandra. Her presence steadied him, softened his nights, gave him a reason to smile again. And then, one evening, in the very same garden bar, Sam went to his knees. Sandra, he said, voice trembling, you made me believe in love again. Will you marry me? Her hand flew to her mouth. Tears welled. Yes. The ring slipped onto her finger, and the bar erupted in applause from strangers who had just witnessed a man rebuild his heart. 2 months later, they married. It was extravagant. Anderson spared no expense. His wife, Monica, stood beside him, smiling as the couple cut their cake. Anderson's own eyes lingered on Sam. He thought of where the man had been only months before, a forgotten figure at the gates, now a groom surrounded by light. Sam wept openly, his tears of gratitude soaking into Sandra's veil. But at the back of the hall, hidden in shadow, another woman's eyes blazed. Rebecca, her fists clenched. She thinks she can take him from me? No. If I cannot have him, no one will. 8 months later, Sandra was heavy with pregnancy. Sam doted on her constantly, insisting she rest, carrying her bags, staying close even at work. But one late evening, duty kept him home while Sandra worked late at the factory. Driving back in her small Toyota, she hummed softly, a bag of vegetables on the passenger seat. The road was quiet. Too quiet. Then, screech. A black SUV cut across her path. 2 men in masks stormed out. A fist shattered her window. Please. Sandra cried. I'm pregnant. They didn't care. She was dragged out, her groceries spilling into the gutter. Tomatoes rolled across the asphalt like witnesses. She was shoved into the back of the SUV, the door slamming shut as it sped away into the night. At that same moment, Sam was pacing his apartment, restless. He dialed her number again. No answer. Then his phone buzzed. A message. His breath froze. A photo. Sandra, tied to a chair in a dark room, clutching her swollen belly. Beside her, Rebecca stood, smiling like a victor. The caption, if you want her alive, you'll do exactly what I say. Sam's knees buckled, his vision blurred. The woman he once loved had returned, but not for reconciliation. This was war. The abandoned warehouse smelled of rust and rot. Rats scurried across the beams above, their squeaks the only sound before the heavy doors groaned open. Sam stepped inside, chest pounding, eyes straining in the dim light. And there she was. Sandra sat tied to a chair, her face pale, her swollen belly trembling under the strain of her sobs. Beside her stood Rebecca, a knife glinting in her hand. Her beauty was still there, but sharpened into something dangerous, her lips twisted in triumph. "Hello, Sam," she said sweetly. "Did you miss me?" "Rebecca," his voice cracked with fury. "Let her go. This isn't you." She laughed bitterly. "Oh, it's me. It has always been me. The woman who gave you her heart. The woman who lifted you when you were nothing. And how did you repay me? By rising without me. By replacing me with her." She jabbed the knife toward Sandra. Sandra whimpered. Sam's fists clenched. Every muscle screamed to lunge forward. But he knew one mistake could cost both Sandra and the child their lives. "You don't have to do this," he pleaded. "We can talk." "Talk." Her voice cracked into madness. "You will divorce her. You will marry me. Or she dies tonight." The blade pressed harder against Sandra's skin. A thin red line appeared, and Sandra gasped. "Rebecca, please." Sam's voice broke. "You left me. You destroyed us that night. I begged you, but you chose pride over love. You killed us when you walked away." For the briefest second, something flickered in her eyes. Doubt. Humanity. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "Then say it," she snarled. "Say you'll marry me. Say she means nothing." Sam's jaw trembled. He opened his mouth, when suddenly, a crash split the air. The warehouse doors burst open. Floodlights blinded the room as armed police stormed in, rifles raised. "Drop the weapon," a commanding voice barked. Rebecca screamed, dragging Sandra closer, the knife trembling against her neck. "Don't come closer. I'll kill her." The officers froze, guns trained but unmoving. One stepped forward, calm but firm. "Rebecca Nwosu, put down the knife. You're surrounded. There's no way out." She laughed, a sound halfway between sob and scream. "You think prison scares me? He's mine. He was always mine." Sandra sobbed. "Please, please don't." Sam took a desperate step forward, his voice shaking but steady enough to cut through the chaos. "Rebecca, look at me. Not her. Me." Her eyes flicked to him, wide, trembling. "You're angry because you lost me," Sam said. "But you didn't lose me to Sandra. You lost me to yourself. You chose greed, pride, cruelty. You left me broken. And now you stand here with a knife to an innocent woman's throat. That isn't love. That's poison." Rebecca's hand shook violently. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Even the officers held their breath. Then she screamed and raised the knife. A gunshot cracked. The blade clattered to the floor. Rebecca shrieked, clutching her wrist. An officer had fired with surgical precision, disabling her without killing her. Sam lunged forward, untying Sandra. She collapsed into his arms, shaking uncontrollably, clutching her belly. "It's okay," he whispered into her hair. "You're safe now. I've got you." Rebecca writhed on the floor, screaming curses. "You'll regret this, Sam. You'll regret betraying me." Officers cuffed her hands behind her back, dragging her out with the thugs she had hired. Her voice broke into sobs that echoed down the warehouse walls until the doors slammed shut. 2 weeks later, the courtroom overflowed. Reporters scribbled, cameras flashed, the public hungry for every detail of the sensational case. Rebecca stood in the dock, her once perfect composure gone, her hands trembling. The judge's voice echoed coldly across the chamber. "Having examined the overwhelming evidence, abduction, attempted murder, endangering the life of a pregnant woman, and conspiracy, this court finds you guilty. You and your accomplices are hereby sentenced to 15 years in prison without the option of fine." The gavel slammed down. Rebecca screamed, collapsing as officers dragged her away. Her final glance at Sam was hollow, not with love, but with a shattered emptiness. Sandra clutched Sam's hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. Sam closed his eyes, whispering a prayer of thanks. 5 days later, dawn broke over Lagos. Sandra was rushed into the maternity ward. Hours of labor ended in cries. First hers, then the soft wails of new life. A nurse placed the child in Sam's trembling arms. Tiny fists clenched, eyes shut tight. The boy felt impossibly small, yet impossibly powerful. "He's perfect," Sandra whispered. Sam kissed the baby's forehead, tears pouring freely. "Wilson," he said hoarsely. "Your name will be Wilson. You will grow strong, and the world will never break you the way it tried to break me." At the doorway, Anderson and Monica stood watching, smiling through their own tears. The billionaire placed his arm around his wife. "This," he said softly, "is why we build. Not just cars, but futures." For Sam, it was the first time in decades that his heart felt not burdened by fear or regret, but filled with hope. 19 years later, Lagos looked different. Glass towers gleamed where rust once ruled. Traffic still snarled, as if determined to outlive every innovation. But the skyline was no longer a horizon of smoke and steel. At the heart of it all stood AVM headquarters. The sprawling warehouse of Sam's youth had become a world-class automotive hub. Marble floors replaced oil-stained concrete. Holographic schematics floated above polished tables. Testing tracks stretched for miles. AVM was no longer just a factory. It was a symbol of African ingenuity, a rival to any brand abroad. And in its corridors, walking with quiet confidence, was Wilson Namdi, 19 years old, tall, sharp-eyed, the son of the man who had once walked through those gates in rags. Wilson was brilliant. He graduated top of his class in aerodynamics engineering, and he carried himself not as the son of a legend, but as someone determined to carve his own name. Engineers greeted him with respect, not out of pity or nostalgia, but because his designs had already stunned them. Still, shadows lingered. On his first week at AVM, Wilson sat in the design lab, sketching a new lightweight engine frame. His pen danced with precision, his thoughts leaping ahead of the page. Then his phone buzzed. Expecting a message from his mother or father, he smiled. But when he unlocked the screen, the smile froze. The message read, "Your father destroyed my life. Now it's your turn to pay." Attached was a photo, Sandra, his mother, leaving the AVM parking lot, unaware of the camera. Wilson's blood went cold. He whispered, "Not again." He had heard the stories of Rebecca, the woman who had nearly destroyed his parents. She was supposed to be gone, rotting in prison. But the words, the venom in them, felt real. Could it be her? Or someone worse? That evening at dinner, Wilson sat silently, pushing food around his plate. Sam noticed. Years had not dulled his instincts. "Wilson," he said gently, "what troubles you?" The boy hesitated, then pushed the phone across the table. Sam read the message, his fork clattering. Sandra covered her mouth, her face pale. Sam exhaled heavily. "Wilson, the moment you stand for something great, enemies rise. I learned that the hard way. But you are not alone. We face this together." Sandra reached for her son's hand. "Never forget that. You carry our strength." Wilson nodded. But deep down, he knew this fight was already personal. Weeks later, AVM prepared to unveil Wilson's first major contribution, a prototype engine frame that promised higher speed, lower weight, and uncompromising durability. It was his chance to prove himself, not just as Sam's son, but as Wilson, the engineer. Investors, government officials, and the press gathered in the main hall. The spotlight fell on him. He tapped the microphone, nerves battling determination. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for trusting me with this project. Today, I present to you a design that could change the face of Nigerian automotive engineering forever." Applause echoed. The cover lifted from the sleek prototype, its polished steel reflecting the lights like a mirror. Then the doors slammed open. Men in masks stormed in, rifles raised. Chaos erupted. Investors screamed. Engineers dived under tables. "Everybody down," one gunman barked. His eyes locked on Wilson. You're coming with us." Sam rose instantly, shielding his son. "Over my dead body." The leader sneered. "That can be arranged." Sandra screamed as one of the gunmen shoved her back. Wilson's heart pounded. His father fought one of them, strength driven by blood, but age slowed him. The rifle rose, aimed at Sam. Wilson acted without thinking. He grabbed the heavy steel cover of the prototype and swung. It smashed into the gunman's chest, sending him staggering back. Sparks flew as equipment toppled. The leader raised his weapon, but a single gunshot cracked the air. A warning shot. Police stormed in, sirens wailing outside, rifles leveled. "Drop your weapons." Within seconds, the attackers were surrounded. They hesitated, then surrendered. Sam rushed to Wilson, clutching him. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Wilson gasped. "But Dad, they wanted me. Not you. Not the company. Me." Sam's chest tightened. This was no longer revenge against him. This was a vendetta against his bloodline. Hours later, at the police station, the leader of the gunmen sat in interrogation. His grin was twisted, his eyes burning with hatred. You think you've won? He sneered. You don't even know who sent us. Then tell us, Sam demanded, his voice cold. The man leaned forward. Remember Rebecca? She may rot in prison, but she has a sister. And she's worse. Much worse. Sandra gasped. Sam's blood froze. Wilson's fists clenched. She's coming, the man continued. For all of you. That night, the Namdi family sat in their living room, the weight of the revelation pressing like a storm. Wilson looked at his father, his voice firm despite the tremor in it. Dad, I can't live in fear. If Rebecca's sister wants a fight, then I'll face her. I'm not a boy anymore. I'm your son. I have to protect this family too. Sam placed his hands on his son's shoulders. Pride and fear clashed in his eyes. Then we face it together. We've survived shadows before. We'll survive again. Sandra's voice was steady. Love kept us standing then. It will now. For the first time, Wilson wasn't just Sam's son. He was part of the fight. Weeks later, Wilson worked late at the AVM testing track. Moonlight washed the asphalt silver. His pen scratched across blueprints, sweat dripping down his brow. From the shadows, a woman's voice whispered, You're even smarter than your father. No wonder Rebecca loved him so much. Wilson froze. His heart hammered. The voice laughed softly, a sound colder than the night. But soon, Wilson, you'll belong to me. Her footsteps melted into darkness, leaving only echoes and dread. Wilson stood alone on the track, staring into the shadows. He realized the truth with chilling clarity. His father's battle had ended. His own was just beginning. Epilogue. AVM's lights glowed across Lagos like a beacon of resilience. Inside, the Namdi family gathered, Sam older but proud, Sandra forever his anchor, Wilson stepping into the legacy. But somewhere in the city, a woman sharpened her plans. Rebecca's sister. Her hatred honed not just by envy, but by years of waiting. For the Namdis, the past was never truly gone. It had simply evolved. And the war for their future was only starting.